Tuesday, and welcome to the MSL Lead Chronicles. It's a podcast on a mission in medical affairs and leadership. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy, Chad Fellers, we're going to have casual talk about important topics and challenges in leadership. And we are so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm one of your hosts, Chad Fellers, along with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. I'm not going to describe you any other way other than nifty today, so I'm taking it easy on you, Mary. How are you doing?
I'm doing terrific, as always. It is Friday. It'll be Tuesday when everybody sees and hears this, but got big plans this weekend. Me and the kids are going to go watch a minor league hockey game tonight. Fun.
I have never been to a game. I hear they're awesome, especially if there's a fight that goes along, all that kind of stuff too.
So that's the thing. Okay, so this is the Texas Stars. It's a Dallas Stars farm team, I guess. And they're playing the Rockford something, Bulldogs or whatever. And this is the American Hockey League, and there are way more fights.
That would be the reason to go. That'd be the reason to go. So entertaining.
When I told Liam that, he's like, "Oh wow, really?" So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
I went to wow. I was in the second or third row. I went to one game in Nashville, and I was astounded. I didn't know there was going to be fighting. I was like, what's going on? Why can't they communicate?
It's been a long time. You can expect there'll be something happens out of this. For sure. Yeah. Now Lexi goes. Lexi gets the jump down. Now everybody's going. Erbaugh is company. Throwing against Le Cavalier and Shannon Erbaugh. Attaboy, Lexi. What a battler he is. Vinny Le Cavalier tough in his own right.
Nevertheless, we are not a sports talk show. But glad to be here, glad to have more conversations about leadership development, about leadership issues, challenges, and even just the hot topics. And we got a great topic today around really the importance of making the right decisions when we're bringing on teammates, right? The people that we get to serve alongside. This kind of really plays off of a previous conversation that we had with Carol Heggie on 5 or 6 episodes back. I don't know. This year has blown by, but we talked about functional leadership, the role in designing, driving, and really the hiring process, asking good questions, etc. So can't wait to dig into this. So before we do, Mary, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of use this as an opportunity to get the perspective from the other side of the coin when it comes to hiring. So Carol Heggie, obviously VP of Medical Affairs. And so today our guest is Blanca Richardson, who has a master's degree in human resource management and organizational leadership. She is SHRM certified. And for those who don't know what that, I can even see. Yeah, you don't know what that is. It's a certification that you get through the Society for Human Resource Management.
Kind of a big deal.
Yes, it's a very big deal. It's a very hard certification to get. And SPHR, which is a senior professional in human resources. I originally met Blanca when we were just kind of talking about this before the show, a little bit at Takeda. And then we really worked quite a bit together at Astellas for several years. And then again at Gilead. And she is now the talent acquisition lead at Alexion Pharmaceuticals. I would also count Blanca as a very dear friend. She has an incredible sense of humor. She loves dogs, like all of us good people do. I think she has a tremendous, unending loyalty and sense of doing the right thing. And she's probably one of the hardest working people on the planet. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a very nice introduction. I feel the same way about you.
Let's pause on the group hug here for a moment. No, I love seeing the banter we already had previous to starting the recording today. So I'm curious first, though, what type of dog do you have, Blanca?
I have two. Currently, they're locked outside of my office door, so I'm hoping you don't hear the paw scratching noise. So abused. But I have a white golden retriever called an English cream. Her name is Luna, and she's 4. And then I have my old buddy, my best friend. He's 13. His name is Bentley, and he's a pit lab mix. And he's a character. He's got a big personality, and he's always in here with me. So he doesn't understand why he can't be in here with me right now. And Mary knows him well. He, speaks up. He talks. He's human. He hears, but
yeah, he's a human. Yeah, he's like a person. And I can't believe he's 13.
Yeah, he's hanging in there.
That's he's lived a great life so far. So
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Blanca, I can't wait. I know we had initial discussions about what we're going to talk about today, but this is going to be really good. But what we do here on MSLE Chronicles, we like to go ahead and give the spoiler in case they only have time for a few minutes just to be able to listen in right now before they can listen to the entire podcast. We like to give the key takeaways. So before we get going, we'd love for you to share if you have any key things that you want leaders or aspiring leaders to think about when it comes to this whole deal around the hiring process.
Sure. Just 3?
Oh, I mean,
just kidding. Just kidding. How much time do you have?
That's right. That's right.
I would say, creating a strategic approach to the whole recruitment plan. That's key. Treat every single new order or requisition or whatever you want to call it as a project, and start with a plan and continue with that plan all the way through. And that would be number 1 for me. Number 2 would be partnering with the hiring manager, the hiring team, the entire way through, not just in the beginning when it's fun and interesting, but all the way through, even through the bad times, through the ghosting periods where you don't hear from them. Just stick with it. Send an email, text them, do whatever you can just to keep the partnership going, and just letting them know you're there. You're still working on their position. Some positions are hard and they take a long time, but I think just to keep that communication, collaboration going throughout the partnership is very important. And then I would say be an expert in what you're doing. So understanding the market before you get started to be able to give that information to the hiring manager and sort of have them trust you from the beginning, right? So you want to, they don't know you. They don't know my background. You're just another recruiter that they have had in a long line of recruiters. And, I like to see how I can stand out by, showing them my expertise in the market and how I know that I can fill this position, explain to them my background and experience, and make them just feel confident that they can count on me.
Ooh, I love that. I love all the takeaways. That last one really caught my attention. Can't wait to dig into that a little bit. But I'm going to be quiet for a minute since you've had this great relationship with Mary for such a long time. Mary, I'll let you open up with some of the questions we want to get into today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I would start with, you and I have worked together a lot, Blanca, and I've kind of become accustomed to your approach and your style when it comes to getting started on a search or a hiring project. But I don't think I've ever really asked you. So when you join a company, do you have an SOP or a standard way of doing things, proven sort of strategy that you like to bring to the company with you and integrate into their hiring process?
Yes, definitely. I don't know if I'd call it an SOP. More so, I'd say my background and network. And so one of the reasons I get hired is for my network. I think that they're hiring me for, my expertise and knowledge, obviously, but also for the network that I've built over the years. And, that's important to maintain those relationships. And so I do bring the same processes that have worked for me, right? So I don't know that I have it in an SOP format, but I use the same strategies that I use at each company that I've been successful at. Obviously, if I've not been successful at something, scratch it. I'm, not going to hold on to something that's not working. But luckily, I haven't come across that too much. Just market fluctuation is all I've got to deal with that, is out of my control.
You talk about the importance of networking. How proactive with you? I'm just curious, like from building it year over year, or what does that look like? I mean, are you continuously scouting and trying to extend your network? Would love to, because I think we can apply that regardless of what position we're in, especially so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So if you think about it, with the MSL role in particular, we have a lot of people over the years that we've figured out want to be an MSL. And so I follow those types of backgrounds in LinkedIn and link in with groups and different things like that, just to see, I guess you would say, the potential talent that would come out of there. I'm linked in and I'm networked with all of the MSLs on LinkedIn right now, right? That's just one of the easy things you can do, is connect and then just keep connected. That's easy. But I go a step further to also try to get the new folks coming in, or the new potential folks that would come in, by linking in with them and talking to them about the MSL position. And they're very interested because that's what they want to be when they grow up. So that one of the things that is difficult, though, is hiring one of them that without the MSL experience. That's the first thing our hiring managers want, right? Why they have one head count, they want to use it on an experienced person, proven with a background in history and even the territory, access to institutions and things like that. So that's key, obviously. But when you follow these people that are not yet MSLs, 5 years later, guess what? They're an MSL. They've been an MSL at different companies, and they're someone I can hire now. And my name's familiar to them. So that's what I consider networking.
Awesome. Love it. Great application, I think.
So you were also talking a little bit about, on the third takeaway, so I'm kind of skipping around, about establishing yourself as a trusted partner with your hiring managers. And, when they don't know you from before, and you kind of sprinkled a little bit, but can you go into a little bit more detail about how you sort of introduce yourself to your hiring managers and explain to them who you are and how you're going to be of value to them and why they should listen to everything you say, and trust your kind of insight?
Yeah, sure. Unlike you, I don't specialize just with MSLs. I have all of R&D, preclinical, clinical, through commercial. And so I do have a wide range of positions that I recruit for, but I do specialize in MSLs in that I've hired them for such a long time that I'm able to understand the position, even though, I'm certainly not, I don't have a clinical background. I couldn't do the role. But I understand enough about it to be able to discern whether or not someone would or could be a good MSL. And if they're a good culture fit for the current company that I'm working for, right? That seems to be most important to managers. You can't really vet that off of a resume. You really need to talk to them and sort of vet their personality and fit that way. And I would say that I would just talk about my past experience, right? So your past experience predict future. So I can say that I've built out oncology teams and MSLs, 28 at Gilead. Last year, the year before that, it was 40. The year before that, when we were just starting oncology, it was 66. So I can give them concrete information and numbers of my background and what I've done. And I think that helps sort of build the trust. They're like, oh, good, she's hired quite a few. She probably knows what she's doing. Let's give her a chance. And so I kind of, at least my foot's in the door. Whether or not they fully trust me or not, I don't know. I think you have to fill a position for them to really like you. But from the beginning, the trust is just me earning it by my actions.
I think that there's an element of it being a confidence thing too. So, and what I mean by that, does the hiring manager have confidence in you and believe that you're capable of steering them in the right direction to the right candidate profile for the right time, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you instill the confidence from that beyond just the numbers? Are there certain questions or tell us more.
So you call it different things. Some people call them intake calls. We call them recruitment strategy meetings, just to put the emphasis on the strategy piece of it. Over the years, there are recruiters that have maybe given us a bad reputation or a bad name or just a mistaken identity, that we're transactional people that are just passing off resumes to them and not really recruiting and not really the expert in the field. So because we have that against us, I start my recruiting strategy meeting just calling, just by psychology behind the title, strategy meeting. And then I start by asking them questions about their current organization. Who do they have in their organization now, and how do they want to complement their team? How many on the team? Will this person have direct reports? Will they be a mentor? Will they be mentored? Just so I can kind of get a gauge of what they're looking for outside of the generic job description, right? So I get a good feeling, they get a good feeling talking about themselves and knowing that I'm listening and paying attention, and I want to find them someone that's a fit first. You get a job description and it doesn't have anything legally so about personality and about the soft skills, right? We can't really, talk about that in a job description, but it's something we can vet at this stage. And then certainly when I'm talking to candidates, I can vet at that stage. So I use my recruitment strategy meeting and I ask them pertinent questions and get to know them in the position as well as I can before the takeoff.
And I feel like that's a lot, like with when candidates are interviewing. I mean, I think you get a sense of how strong a candidate they are by the questions they ask. So, I mean, I think the same goes for you. Asking certain questions probably helps demonstrate to the hiring manager that you really know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it helps them realize that I'm going to be talking with candidates. So give me the information so that I can give it to the candidate and they can trust me. And I want to show the candidate we have respect for their time. They have questions. I want to be able to answer them and not say, oh, let me get back to you, or I don't know that. I should know that. I'm recruiting for the position. So I should have an answer for most of the questions that they have. Now, if they go into the metrics and what's required of them and that sort of thing, I think it's the hiring manager's position to talk to that. And I'll tell them that. And they understand completely.
Do you work that out ahead of time with the hiring manager? Like, if a candidate goes down this avenue, that's your bucket. You're supposed to talk about that. Or do they tell you?
That's a good question.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? It's never really come up. It's just been something that I've stated, right? So my expectations of this is my job, this is what I'm going to do for you. And then my expectations of your part of the deal will be to, answer the technical questions that the candidate might have. So I guess I'd say it was established, again, at the recruitment strategy meeting up front. But it's not really something I ask. It'd be something that I would, state, or that's my expectation of them. Listen, it's a partnership. We have to work together, and that's going to be their part of it. We have to sell it to the candidate. You have to stop this, I think old way of thinking where the candidate better be happy to interview with us. And, no, it doesn't work that way anymore. We need to try to get the best candidate and we need to groom, woo them. So I think that we should be professional and have answers for them.
Have you ever had a hiring manager select to move forward with a candidate in the process that you interviewed them from beginning to end? You didn't make a call until you finished the whole interview, and you're like, these things are sticking out to me, specific things. And they wanted to move forward on somebody like against your recommendation, and like, what would you do? Or do you kind of sit back and go, okay, that's your choice?
You bring up a good point, because you don't really, and they don't really know what they want sometimes until they see it. And so they really aren't able to convey that to us in the first call. And that's why it's so important to always have weekly calls with them. You learn more and more each week as you get to know that hiring manager and what they're looking for. And as you're going through resumes and the screening process. But I'll say I really thought they were verbose. They really bragged a lot. They didn't let me get a word in edgewise. I really felt like they were dominating the conversation, and I didn't feel like it was a give and take interview. I'm not sure that this is going to be your person. And they will say, you know what? We are looking for someone that's really persistent and assertive and so confident that they'll just bull right over you and keep talking. So that might work for us. So, what I consider to be a not a good candidate or not a good candidate screen isn't, that's why I'm so objective. I'm just giving them the information how I see it. I'm not saying I recommend against it. I'm saying, would this work for you? This is my experience. This is what I've just noticed during my call. Now it's only 30 minutes. Would you like 30 minutes with them to talk about the technical piece? And then you let me know what you think about them. Sometimes we move forward and sometimes we don't, just depending on what their answer is. If they do move forward, I definitely have respect for them. That's, they know what they're getting into. They've listened to me. They don't owe me anything. My feelings aren't hurt if they move forward with the candidate I don't recommend. They usually come back to me and say, all right, there's a little bit tough getting through. But, sometimes they do decide to move forward. And, like I said, I think it comes down to sometimes they don't know what they're looking for until they see it. And that might be, Mary, why you might miss a candidate that's not specific enough, right? Because you're just honed in on what you think the manager's looking for or what you would consider to be a good candidate, as opposed to maybe something that the manager hasn't disclosed.
Is such a really good point, because it's an opportunity for you to learn or refine what it is they're looking for. I mean, you've worked in all therapeutic areas, so what is it? Cardio is one of those areas where sometimes they feel like they need a more aggressive personality, and they might be, oh, that's great, that's exactly what we need. But I will tell you a story, a quick one, because I know you don't
look at
like
my
verbose.
watch and let me set my timer. Let's see.
But I will tell you, and
I was going to say that. Really
stop
good.
it. This actually happened on a position I was recruiting for at Alexion, like probably 5 years ago. And the person, I'm not going to go into too many specifics, but the person was very rude to me. And like, I mean, I can't even tell you, I've never spoken to anybody like that. And condescending and all of these things. And then I spoke to...
You know your stuff and what you're talking about. I can't imagine them being condescending.
Well, they
just didn't know who they were dealing with, did they?
I will tell you the whole story later, but so I talked to somebody high up in human resources, and I expressed my concerns. I said, I think that we're going to have problems down the line with this person. And he said, thank you for letting me know. Turns out that this person, she was being this way to everybody that was not probably a decision maker.
Wow.
She was being this way to the internal recruiter. She was being this way to the scheduler.
Staff.
Yeah, to all the support staff. And it did not end up ending well for that person. She did not ever become an employee of Alexion, as far as I know. And that's actually one of the things I always loved about Alexion, because you were talking about candidate experience, and it was always the most important thing for them. Even when things went virtual, and everybody, they do the walkout, walk the candidate out to the front door. They continued with the virtual walkout, even on video. And I always thought that was so really good. But that just goes to show that the culture matters. Anyway, so sometimes somebody is that way too, because that's how they treat people they don't think matter to them.
True. Right. And you caught on to that. But that's part of you being a good partner and you caring about the company, right? And you wanting to keep a good culture and you understanding their needs. And so that's so important in a partner. We do the same job. I just have a different position than you. We want the same thing. And that's why we get along. You're not trying to get a fill because you want to make money off of of me. You want to place the candidate that you know is really good in a role that you just know there's going to be a perfect match for. And I think that just speaks to your integrity and the reason why we've been, more than just colleagues, right? We're friends, Facebook friends even. And that's kind of a big deal for me, okay? Because I don't have a lot of Facebook friends. It's just my family. So, it matters how you treat the organization you're working for and what your ethical background, what you think. Just the fact that you care enough to call HR to, pre-warn them about a, potential disaster down the road, says a lot.
And I really felt sorry for the recruiting coordinator who was so sweet, that was being treated so poorly. But anyway, we'll move along from that. So, because your input is so super valuable, so when we kind of toward your second takeaway, we were talking about really partnering with the hiring manager. So let's say you're at the very beginning, and do you have any input into the requisition itself?
Yeah, I would say that's when we're level setting during the first call. And so since the position isn't posted, that's when we can make some tweaks. For example, if I see that they have a bachelor's plus, let's say 10 years on their job description, that's an opportunity for me to ask, would you really take someone with a bachelor's degree, or do you need that terminal degree? Because it's just been my experience, people want the terminal degree. And so that's their opportunity to say no. So we can make changes then, remove it from the job description completely, or leave it if it's something that their legal department wants to be on the job description, because, it's not easy to change job descriptions. Sometimes it's, static, right? You just have one manager. You can't have 7 different job descriptions for the same position. It's hard. So you can leave it on there, but just knowing that what they're looking for is easier for me to just weed out the people that don't have the terminal degrees, right? So regardless of what the job description says, because it is so generic, I find out the preferences that they have and what they're looking for. And they'll tell me right away, I'm looking for somebody, they have to have, they'll get a set number. They have to have at least 3 years of experience. I really feel like we don't have any problems retraining them at that point in their career. And so that's something that I can use and work with. And when I'm screening candidates or when I'm reviewing resumes, right, I'm going to get a lot of applicants for MSL roles. They're just that popular. And like I said, probably I want to say, maybe, I don't know, not that great with percentages, but I want to say 70 to 80% are going to be people who want to be an MSL. And that's just the way it is. And I don't have time with multiple positions to be sifting through resumes. And so, you better believe I'm going to be looking for the strongest candidates and be very picky.
So you were talking about like a certain number of years in that scenario, are there ever times where you may identify 2 questions. One would be, do you ask the question why they want a certain number? Like, do you dig in to see what's the driving behavior behind that thought process? Would be
yeah,
one.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then are there ever scenarios where you continue to look outside that to revisit the conversation, right? You talked a lot about having networking with people that don't have experience, but yet they could have a lot of transferable skills that may work well with that. Are there ever situations where you had that conversation with the hiring manager to revisit something as far as looking, broadening the lens or bringing a candidate that may fall outside? And how would you handle that conversation if so?
Sure. I'll try to remember all 46 questions you just asked.
Did I ask 46 questions? Oh my gosh.
Just kidding.
Six, 47.
Here's like a multi-tiered question.
Yes, it's never simple for me. Just answer it. That's fine.
Answer whichever one you want to.
That's right.
Yeah,
Pick
let's
one.
see. I
Pick one.
think what you're saying is, do you ever, re-look at the job description to cast a wider net? So I'm not so super specific on what they're asking for in the beginning. And the answer is yes. So we meet weekly, and that's what we're doing, right? We're looking at the candidates. I'm showing them what the market is yielding and saying, I'm getting a lot of candidates that are entry level, would you consider coming down on those 3 years? There's, I've seen a couple that have 1.5 years, some at 2 years. What is magical about the 3 years? Well, it just may be, well, my colleague hired someone with 3 years and they were great. So, it could just be just a learned behavior or just gossip or, just something that they've heard that they think is going to be the right number or thing to do. So I can do a lot to dispel that thinking by saying, listen, I think this person has a great background, but it's only 2 years. You want to see him? And they do. Of course they want to see him. You give them a little tickler. Yeah, they want to see him. So I think I would revamp the search. I wouldn't if I was having luck, right? So if I'm finding exactly what they're looking for, I don't need to, cast a wider net. I can be super specific and give them what they think they want. Sometimes, I'll give them exactly what they want and they're like, maybe I don't need this, or maybe I need more experience, right? So it's kind of like, again, going back to sometimes they don't know what they want until they see it.
Well, I think that I've run into it a couple times in the interviewing process, right? I'll have a candidate that has 10 years of experience. And so I automatically think this is going to be the one. And they get all the way to the finalist presentation and they're basically literally copied and pasted text out of an article, didn't even create slides, just and read the slides, right? And so I'm thinking, how in the world do they have 10 years of experience to do this? So to me, right, I don't want to, I rely on my partners to help push me or get me to consider others as well too, that may fall outside that particular band that I'm thinking of. And because my preconceived notions, to your point, they don't always align right with what reality or what I'm actually really wanting. So out of a candidate. So that's a tough thing. And that's why it's so important to have a trusted partner in that relationship that you were speaking of earlier.
Yeah. And another thing is you probably don't recruit for positions as often as we do, right? I mean, this is our full-time job. This is what we do day in and day out, where you're probably hiring maybe potentially, if you're lucky, 1 to 2 headcounts a year. It depends what your financial situation is. But if you have the headcount, it's a long length of time from the last time you recruited. You're probably going to have a different recruiter. Chances are that same person's not going to be in the position. It's great if you can get, your same recruiter back if you liked working with them, but sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. So you're starting a brand new relationship and learning a brand new process because it's specific to that particular recruiter every single time you open up a headcount. And so I can see how that you would come with preconceived notions of, this is what happened last time. We took a long time to find the right person. So this time, I want to speed up that process. Yeah. And then I can kind of probe and say, well, what took so long? Was it your expectations or was it the market?
That is the active listening questions there in the follow-up. That's so good.
So what can you, I think about like some new managers, like one of my NSLs that I placed just got promoted. And so now she's going to be a new manager, and I know for sure she's going to have to backfill herself. And there's one other open headcount. So, what do you think are some of the mistakes that new managers make when they're hiring for the first time?
I'm probably being clouded by other people's experiences. So, your colleagues, as soon as you have an opening, are very interested. They've got referrals. They've got the perfect candidate for you, or they want to be involved in the hiring process, even though it's not their headcount in some way. It's just the nature of the job, the MSL field, going all the way up, principal, the medical directors, everybody in that field is so incestuous. Their relationships are so close. Everybody knows each other. It's such a large field, but yet it's so small. I never understand how you could know so many people, but you do. And it just goes to prove what an important position it is. But anyway, if for new managers, I think that sometimes they get bogged down by listening to their colleagues saying, oh my gosh, you better make sure you get at least 3 great candidates to take to interview because they're going to fall out or they're going to decline or they're going to become unavailable. So it's them coming with, like Chad said, preconceived notions of what the process is going to be. And just trying to help them, let's start new. This is your first time, so let me help you through this, and I can help you maneuver through all of the process that we're going to go through. I'll be able to answer all of your questions, and I'm going to be here for you as your partner, from that sort of factual perspective, as opposed to what my past experiences have been, what you might get from your colleagues. So that I would give them that advice, sort of just to clear the mind and try to start fresh with, being excited about finding a candidate and going through the process. I mean, it's fun. You get to interview people and meet and talk to a lot of people. We talk to twice as many people as we give you guys, right? So, we'll talk to 10 people and only pass on 2. That's very typical, because they're just not good enough. We don't want, we have that in us. We don't want to give you anybody that isn't, what we consider top notch. And so we'll do a lot of the screening out in the beginning of the process and save you from that. And so let us help you, right? Let us save you from trying to do your own screening or trying to talk to that many candidates. Let us sort of narrow down the field for you. If we're lucky enough to get that many candidates, I'm speaking from a really, fruitful market, but there's times where, we cannot find an MSL, and they definitely don't have oncology experience, that sort of thing, or hematology experience is like more niche. And so, they might not have a lot of opportunity to screen a lot. So then that's where they were also trying to set their expectations of being a new manager. Guess what? We don't have a lot of candidates right now. And do you want to wait until we do have a more fruitful pool? Or do you want to pull back on some of your requirements? Do you want to maybe think about someone who's more entry level and has the transferable skills, to Mary's point? Looking at somebody that hasn't been an MSL before, but has a great clinical background and has their terminal degree, and they would be fantastic. If you just need to give them a chance, or, get them out there.
I think that's an excellent
Sorry, that was
point.
a long-winded answer.
No, it's full of great information. It actually made me think of something I just kind of wanted to reiterate. Is you were saying this earlier, when you're sort of establishing yourself as the new talent acquisition person to your new hiring managers and being able to demonstrate your value, is your knowledge of the marketplace. And, if you have a new manager or a very experienced manager who hasn't been really paying attention to the fluctuations in the market and the availability of candidates, they're like, nope, I have to see 3 candidates to take to final, but your knowledge of the marketplace is that you can say, if you wait until you have 3, that first one that you really liked is going to evaporate before you get the second or the third. And, so that's why your niche expertise is so valuable to these hiring managers.
Right. And I'm not trying to scare them. I'm really just trying to give them, a really good picture of what, in my experience, has happened and what will happen. And it's also an opportunity to talk about candidate experience. I mean, we don't want to leave a candidate hanging. What's your feedback? Do you like this candidate or not? Please tell me now. Can we jump on a call? Can you give me some feedback on these resumes I just sent you? So I talk about candidate experience during the strategy call too, so they can understand that it's two-sided. We're also being interviewed, and it matters how long you keep somebody waiting.
Indeed it does. One of the worst feelings is feeling ghosted, especially when we're in the midst of one of those process, right? If you take the time, the way I view it, and if I'm taking the time really to go through that, because it's a tough process, right? Between job description, or walking through the multiple interviews, walking through even presentations, etc., or even just trying to make a move in a relatively quick fashion. That's one of the most frustrating things, to be able to just be stalled out quite a bit. So I love the urgency that you want to provide to the hiring manager. That's something that the hiring managers really need to consider as you're listening to this too, because you add it to this network is really small, right? Everybody knows everyone. And so this can impact even potential interactions down the road and future partnerships, et cetera. So that's something that we really have to keep in the forefront of our mind, is how long we're taking to move things forward.
we've had, Mary and I have had a couple of conversations over the years about certain companies that maybe, their culture wasn't going to be the right fit for an MSL joining, and all the MSLs knew it. I couldn't find any, so it's like, Mary, what's the word out there? What's going on? And she's like, well, what I'm hearing from my candidates is this. So it's helpful to have a partnership, someone like Mary too that knows the market even better than me, because she works with so many different companies. I'm just my sole discretion is for the company I'm working for that now, and I'm sort of like, that's it.
So what determines when you would actually engage an outside source to partner in the hiring process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know when it's time to give up. I'm really competitive. I want to fill my own positions. I want to say that I'm the best recruiter ever, and I don't want to give it away. But sometimes, not sometimes, always, I need to do what's best for the client. And I'm not finding anybody. They're not in my database. They're not in my network, but I know that they're in somebody's network, and probably they're in Mary's. So she would be the one that I trust and I would reach out to engage. And what I'd say to the hiring manager is, listen, it's not that I can't find somebody, but I'm, worried about your timeline. You told me you wanted this filled in the first quarter, and I really want to help you achieve that. And it's my responsibility as your partner to know when to give up and when to ask for help. And I think I've met that, that time is coming. So, we can go one of two ways. We can ask for outside help, or we can leave this open and sort of dragging on. And that's no fun either.
Yeah. And believe me when I say, she doesn't give me every MSL job she works on. And she knows I bugged the crap out of her like a year and a half ago over this huge build out she did, and she didn't use me. And I was like, but she didn't need to. She was finding everybody she needed, and she wasn't overloaded with other positions to fill. She had plenty of bandwidth to fill them on her own. And I get that.
Situational.
I still bugged her.
Yeah, I would say Mary is the type where, she can look at a job description and just know that she's got the perfect person for it. And she's very convincing. And so she'd call me to, sell someone, but not even just for payment, crazily enough. It's just, she wants to make the connection. She's happy to give the person away, to do an introduction. And I really have a lot of respect for that, because, while I'd love to pay her, $1 million all the time, we don't always have that in our budget. So,
well, Chad knows, because the person I gave as a free referral to one of your former employers very recently is one of our mutual very good friends.
Yes,
We
indeed.
can talk about that offline, because I don't want to give too much away. And then I met him at a conference, the talent acquisition person that wouldn't let me submit her, but then let me give her for free. But anyway, so
probably happens to you a lot.
Well, you know what? I was actually a guest on a podcast recently with a guy named Mark Whitby, and he said, "What do you think sets you apart from other recruiters?" And or what is one of your business development things you do that may set you apart? I said, well, I've recently found out that my method, my Grateful Dead philosophy of giving things away, that not a lot of, or any maybe, recruiters do that. And he asked me what I meant.
None that I work with.
And I told him, and he goes, how often do you do that? And I said, I just did it this morning. And he goes, why would you do that? And I said, why would I stand in the way of a candidate getting a job that's meant for them? Because the company wouldn't pay me a fee. That's really inhumane, I think. But, but enough about that.
I think it's about pay it forward. I think you're going to end up, reaping
in heaven.
And
I'm going to end up in heaven.
Hopefully it'll happen with your next client, but
yeah.
Heaven's also good.
Yeah. I mean, heaven's good. I'm not ready to go yet, but at least I know I'll be there. So while we're spreading the love, one of the things that you do, Blanca, that I don't know if any of my other talent acquisition partners that I work with do is when the MSL gets to the final stage and they go the presentation, you're like the only one I know that actually attends the presentations. I know, yeah, right? And, you know, you've told me this story before, but I would love it if you would share it for the listeners, and maybe even some talent acquisition people who are around or hiring managers that may be listening about why it's useful for your talent acquisition person to listen in on the presentation.
Yeah, the professional answer is definitely I learn a lot from it. I like to attend. I also can finish. Chad, earlier you asked, can you make a decision in a couple of minutes? If I still wasn't sure after my 30 minutes with them on the phone screen, I'm definitely sure after their presentation, right? So it gives me more insight to their personality and how they field questions and how they hold up under pressure, which is what I can't get out of a phone screen with their, they already have the scripted answers. I'm not going to ask them any surprise interview questions, right? So they can interview beautifully. But can they present beautifully and field questions? Not so much. That's usually when they fall out. And so I like to attend. I was telling Mary earlier, I'm just nosy. I just want to know what they do. I want to just be that fly on the wall. So I do want to know how it unfolds. And we've had some comical ones, but a lot of it is just me, learning. Not that I'm learning the science, but I'm learning more about what the manager's looking for by their comments and by their questions. And I'm learning more about the candidate for sure. And then it's to contrast and compare. Once you've seen 3 presentations, you know who's presenting better. And is that the right person to go with? Should you put more merit on the presentation? A lot of my hiring managers do.
Really like that. You're actually assessing 2 different components of that. You're assessing the candidate and you're assessing the hiring manager too, right? So it's helping you be able to adapt without he or she really knowing what you're doing as well too, to understand what their likes and preferences are and what they're really aiming for. That's great. I think that should be a great best practice for others to be able to incorporate into a finalist presentation to be able to get that perspective. That's a really cool thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I enjoy it. Definitely. Like I said, I want to know what they're doing in there, and I want to hear. It's my candidate. I'm kind of, sort of protective as well. So if I have a really good candidate I'm rooting for, I want to be there for them to feel more comfortable that I'm not, like the other experts in the room, but I'm just there for them. And technical issues, if they can't pull up the presentation, they've sent it to me, so I have it. Just. Are you okay with us recording this? Just different things that make them feel comfortable with their recruiter or their HR person on hand.
Has attending these types of things made you shape questions differently or ask different questions in a screening? And tell us about that.
Sure. Definitely. I listen to the questions that are asked. It's almost always the same questions asked. And so I start using that in my pre-screening since I know it's so important, to the hiring manager. They want to know, one of the big ones is, what amount of time did you put into this presentation beforehand? How long did you have to prepare for it? And you get all sorts of answers, but that really catches them off guard. And so during the pre-screen with them, I ask them, there is going to be a presentation. How long do you think you'll need so that I can schedule appropriately? I'll put the interview a week out if you feel like you need a week. And it also depends on how the hiring manager does the presentation. They can give me the abstract to supply to the candidate, or they can just say, I was talking to Mary about this, a relevant topic of your choice. You come up with it, but that's like a loaded gun sometimes. You do not know what you're going to get. Relevant is not relevant, does not mean relevant to everyone.
100%
We'll have to share
agree
some
with
stories
that.
offline about that too.
Yes, they're definitely. I was just thinking through a couple of examples that just stick out in my mind, and we probably don't have time to talk about them today. But yeah, that can really open up a can of worms when you're thinking about leaving it that broad, and not giving some clear direction.
As you're advising on who should be a part of this whole final interview panel, Because, some companies will have the director and some of their MSLs, and that's the panel. And I mean, it comes in all shapes and sizes. What is your philosophy? What do you think is the best way to go with that?
Just because of my HR background, I would go with a diverse panel, and not just diversity in gender or ethnicity, but just in experience. And so even if they're not working with this person cross-functionally, I think having someone, from another team, another therapeutic area, interview them and give their perspective is really important. I think that we can gain a lot from outsiders that aren't looking for certain answers and looking for the buzzwords and everything, and just, really asking some core competency questions of the candidate. And I think it's refreshing for the candidate too, to get, sort of another perspective besides the hiring manager and their fellow colleagues as an MSL. There should be a commercial person there for sure. That's an easy ask, right? But, what about someone from regulatory affairs or project management, or just in another area that you collaborate with, but you don't really think of them as an asset? You might want to include them in your interview panel and see what their perspective is. And I talk about that at the recruitment strategy meeting. I already start talking about the panel. Think ahead about who your panel is going to be when you start to interview these candidates. And, you'll have to reach out to them and ask them if they want to participate or if they can participate, but pick 5 or 6 top people who you would, want to be on your interview team. And then we can go through them and see if it makes sense. I can help you sort of hone that list down if it's too large, or beef it up if it's too small.
Yeah, it's important to think about beyond just the function itself, right? Because a candidate is making a commitment to a company as well, too. And we talk about culture. That's always a big thing. And you can always go to a website and read about what the philosophy is. But being able to get a perspective from other parts of the organization can really be helpful for the candidates to see if it's the right fit for them as well, too. So we think about that whole process of interview process is bidirectional. And talking about selling the company to the candidate, I think that's important. That's a really good tip. I think commercial certainly is a way. I think even thinking outside the box, whether it's marketing, whether it's some of these that maybe it's in training. How can you get different partners involved for different perspectives as well too? And it works all the way around. It gives them exposure to other parts of the organization too. So it's a win-win to diversify that way. Really, really good advice with that. Blanca, this has been a really informative conversation. I've learned a lot. I really didn't know how. I've never taken the time to step back and think how meticulous this process is. All the things that are involved with this. Your experience was very eye-opening to us. Thanks for taking some time to share this with our audience. I know we get feedback all the time, and I know we're going to get some great feedback on this. We have several listeners that are interested even stepping into a leadership type of role. I think that this is going to be very informative to them and really close that gap. Instead of learning the hard way, I think that they're going to be able to apply some of these things right into the opportunity. And then it's also going to train others as well, too, to think about things different. That's one of the biggest things that we have here is we realize that it's hard to learn in isolation. We want to learn from one another. So thanks so much for taking time today to join us.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. The time just flew by.
Absolutely.
I looked up at the clock. I'm like, oh, wow.
I know.
I think another thing that's going to happen, we'll call it the fourth takeaway, is I think some hiring managers are going to look at how organized and meticulous your approach to this is, and they're going to look at their talent acquisition teams and go, yeah,
Chances are
they're going to demand more out of them, or more of a relationship. And I think that is so important because sometimes they don't have the continual follow-up and have sort of that recheck. I think that's one of the things that I really took away that I didn't realize happened so frequently. So I love it.
It's the It's the consultative approach versus transactional, right? This isn't just another transaction on my desk. This is a whole new project for me. I'm invested in this. I want to help you fill your position with the perfect person.
I've loved every minute.
Yep, really good. Well, listeners, thanks so much for tuning in again to MSL Lead Chronicles. Can't wait to be back again with you in a couple of weeks. Until then, take this information, think about it, figure out ways to apply it, think about how you want to utilize it in the future for a new opportunity as well too. Until then, have a great evening, and we will see you next time.